Never can say goodbye. No, 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 no. Never can say goodbye.
We couldn't let him go just yet. It's our special send-off to Lewis Wilson from Adams State to Utah State. He is now a man of the Mountain West Conference. Conference you know well. We saw Adams State play 8 opponents from the Mountain West over the last 5 years. How much was familiarity a factor in starting this conversation with Utah State and making the move to Logan, Utah?
It was a big factor, actually. You want to be in a situation where you have some comfort in your recruiting base, some knowledge of the league. I think it certainly helped me that Coach Duryea knew that I was familiar with league opponents, and for me, I kept saying I want to be in a place where I'm in my wheelhouse in terms of not only my comfort in living in a particular community, which I am in Logan, but also in understanding what it takes, what type of people it takes to be successful in a particular league, which I am very comfortable with as it relates to the Mountain West.
Those were such competitive games you played against Mountain West Conference opponents, but there was a little bit of pushback and some criticism that came from coaches around the conference. Well, Adams State is hurting their Division II regional ranking by playing all of these D1 games that don't count. Yet here you are beating Utah in Salt Lake City, playing neck and neck with a great Stu Morrill Aggie team your second year. When at Utah State, and we're right there with them at halftime, you were trying to be bold. You were trying to change the perception of Adams State basketball. How much of it was calculated and tied to some of those big D1 games?
Well, it was very calculated. First and foremost, to be very honest, it was financially motivated.
Yeah.
Because we operated, at Adams State with a very restricted budget situation, and in order to afford to be able to buy home games, which are really hard to get in Alamosa, we needed money, and in order to generate that money, we needed to get paid by some Division I schools, so we leveraged relationships. I happen to have a lot of relationships in the Mountain West region. So it was first and foremost a financial consideration to play those games. Secondly, it was a recruiting consideration. When you're recruiting kids that have just missed becoming Division I players, they want to play Division I teams. And we've always sold, while I was at Adams State, the idea to recruits that, you are not going to play Division I basketball, but we're going to be a Division I program. And in order to do that, we have to play against the best, and we played against some really good Western teams in those 5 years. So financial and recruiting, and then lastly, it was certainly a developmental thing for your team. I didn't have a lot of concern for the regional rankings and those things. One, I didn't understand them, and I've not talked to anybody who has been able to explain it to me in a way where they do understand it, or can speak coherently on how they come about it, except Coach Schick at Colorado Mines. He's really got a good feel for it. But my consideration was the development of the team. Now, would it be better for me to play a Division II team on the road, or to play a Division I team on the road? Well, financially, it's better to play the Division I team on the road. Recruiting-wise, it's better to play the Division I team on the road. And the development of our team, it's better because you're able to attract better talent. And if we take care of the business in the Division II games, as we clearly showed in the first 3 years we were here, you're going to make the regional tournament anyway.
You mentioned the first 3 years, and it seemed like in the 5 years you were at Adams State, you can kind of look at it in terms of the first 3, the last 2 years. You go 59 and 27 your first 3 years. A lot of coaching changes in the RMAC after your first season. You've had 9 coaching changes in 5 years in the RMAC. 3 after your first year, including UCCS and CSU Pueblo. They went 0-6 against you in your first 2 years, and there was a major investment made to change the culture and focus of those programs. How do you view the first 3 years, the last 2, when you look at the university, the program, and what happened in the conference within those 5 years?
Well, the conference definitely improved, in my opinion, from between the first and the last year. I don't think there's any question. Play got better. I think coaching in specific places, not that the coaches are better than the coaches that left, I think that the fits were better. And I think some coaches that left built the foundation for other people to take advantage of. And I think that always works in that way. You know, but I think, you know, making the regional, unless you win the RMAC shootout, there's no guarantee for that. Yeah. You know, I think the biggest difference was that in the first 3 years we played with the Northern Sun, and there were 2 conferences in the first 2 years that we had to consider to go to the regional. We then locked up with the Lone Star and the Heartland, and so there's 3 conferences sharing bids in my last 2 years. So I think that made it far more difficult to make the regional. I believe that our 5th team this past year is equal to any team that we coached here, and they won 19 basketball games. But just as it would be, you know, the Lone Star I think ended up with 4 representatives. You had 1 from the Heartland, and you had 3 from the RMAC. So overall, I think coaching improved. I think overall teams improved, and I think more than anything, the change where we're matched up with 2 teams from Texas and Oklahoma region, as opposed to just 1 from the Northern Sun, changed the dynamics quite a bit.
Well, you mentioned that this 19-win team from 2015. You know, the reality of 2015 is before the season even started, there was a major allegation that was made against you, against the program. There was a 72-hour period where your name was in the news statewide. And after those 72 hours were over, the story didn't go away, but the conversation ended. A former campus chief of police made an allegation that you had threatened an Adams State police officer. You had a limited response, no comments from the athletic department, from Adams State University. Pueblo Chieftain runs with the story, 9 News runs with the story, but it's one-sided. We never heard from you. What happened in July?
The first thing I want to preface and say, the officer in question is deceased, was tragically killed in a car accident, so with respect to her family, I certainly in no way want to impugn her character or integrity or anything having to do with that. So what took place in June on campus was a very routine traffic stop, and very common to a lot of traffic stops. There was a disagreement between the officer and their perception of what took place, what she witnessed, and what I experienced as a driver. And in the course of that disagreement, you know, I made very clear to the officer that I felt very unsatisfied with the situation, and that I asked for a card so that I might be able to talk to someone else, and she obliged, and really that was the extent of the deal. There was no citation for anything. You know, I had my whole family, my 2 daughters in the back seat, pretty shook up. You know, we were pretty scared based on what took place, not with the police officer, but the avoidance of an accident at that time. And so, you know, I was very clear. I was gonna reach to a different authority. She was very professional in giving me the card. We moved on. I talked to her supervisor, who I, you know, discovered was the former chief of police at the university campus. He and I have always had a collegial relationship. He talked to my teams at the beginning of every season. We never had any animus between us, any problem. We talked on the phone that day. He asked me a question related to the incident and asked were there any threats made, which really shocked me because, again, it was a fairly routine stop. And I let him know in no uncertain terms that there wasn't, and then that was it. And then you go 2 months later, I never talked to anybody about the incident. I never talked to my athletic director. I never talked to any university person. I never talked about it. It was a nothing burger to me. It was a routine traffic stop. I was doing 8 miles an hour on First Street. Anyone knows First Street in Alamosa by the campus, you know, bumper to bumper cars. And so it just wasn't very important to me. I talked to who I said I wanted to talk to. I felt very satiated that the chief was, you know, going to handle whatever needed to be handled. He thought both sides could have handled the communication better, and we moved on. So I thought, and all of a sudden I started getting phone calls. I was in Alaska on vacation with my family, and I started getting phone calls. I was blown away by the article, and I was certainly wanting very much so to be very aggressive in defending my name, because the chief made lots of accusations that impugned Adams State athletic department in particular, but he only specifically mentioned one person by name, and I was definitely interested in defending my name and my character, particularly in a situation which I just felt it was again a nothing situation, and so I was disappointed when it wasn't as aggressive in terms of defending my character. I think that that was hurtful, to be very honest, for me, because I've worked very, very hard in that community to hold my kids accountable when they do things wrong vis-a-vis law enforcement. Certainly myself, anyone that knows me knows that an evening out is an evening in my kitchen with family and friends. I did nothing. Even the current chief of police of the community is someone I count as a friend, is someone that I've visited with socially, we entertained in my home. Before he became the chief of police, my relationship has always been pretty good. I've always been a person that try to encourage my players not to use law enforcement in a negative way because they're doing their job. I'm no different than anybody else. When you're stopped by the police, first and foremost, you try to be as respectful as you can. But secondly, you never think you're doing anything wrong. Yeah. And you're always, in that questioning mode. But I was really disappointed because I thought it reflected my personal character in an absolutely negative way and in a dishonest way. And I thought, quite frankly, I was collateral damage to something that was bigger between the chief of police and the university, and I thought the university had a responsibility to make sure to put that out there, and I don't think they ever did that in a substantial way, and I was disappointed in that, and I don't mind saying it because I've told them that.
Yeah. June 28th is when the incident happened. He was dismissed from his position on June 30th. The story broke, and it was a classic media ambush job where you were in Alaska. The story said Lewis Wilson cannot be reached. Well, you're 4 or 5 hours back, middle of the night is when Joel Schultz released this letter to every media affiliate in the state of Colorado. Only one gave it front page coverage. But when the chieftain did that, unsubstantiated, no comments from you, that allowed the story to be set in stone. So now you've got this cloud of suspicion hanging over you, hanging over the program, and you've got to go into year 5, 19-win team, ready to make some noise, but with this uncertainty surrounding the program. What did that moment do preceding the 2015 season to kind of change the complexion of what was going on with Adams State basketball?
Quite frankly, did nothing, because again, and I want to be very, very direct about this, this story had very little to do with Lewis Wilson. Lewis Wilson was a pawn in something that was bigger, and in defense of the university couldn't say a lot because it was an employee issue and they were restricted from commenting on an employee. Ultimately, they asked the employee, was he willing to allow them to say whatever needed to be said. If they gave them a waiver, they could talk about exactly why he was terminated. The President Savaldi, did come out publicly and say he knew nothing of an incident, a traffic incident, and so therefore there was no correlation between the dismissal of the employee and the traffic incident, which again, I cannot emphasize enough, was a no citation incident. I want to say that, you and I could have different perceptions of the same thing. So I do recognize that someone might have a different perception, so I don't want to question the veracity of someone, but I was just simply I was simply collateral damage in something that had something to do with the chief of police's employment and the university. He used it to his benefit. I was damaged by it. I felt very hurt by the fact that the university was not able or not willing to more vigorously defend my character in that situation when they knew full well that I had nothing to do with that situation. But that had nothing to do with my team. My players were fairly insulated from that. I did address it honestly with them and told them that that there's always lessons to be learned. I think more than anything, I think it damaged You know, for some people that might be on the fence with who you are stylistically, it might have reinforced something that, you know, should not have been reinforced. But as far as our team, it was distracting for me personally. But a coach has to, a leader of any leader has to compartmentalize things, because you're always going to deal with things. There's never going to be full support for any leader. That's just the nature of leadership. You know, you're going to make decisions that offend about half the people half the time. So you gotta understand there are going to be those people that are not with you for whatever reason, and you have to move forward. I thought with our basketball team, more than that, it was about bringing a collection of guys together and trying as quickly as we can. You know, we always have so much turnover, to bring guys together and get them focused and get them going. It personally hurt me. It personally scarred me. It changed for me and my family on that day. You know, we love the Valley. We love the Valley. We still love the Valley, but it hurt us. It hurt us deeply. I'd be dishonest if I didn't say it had a profound personal effect on me.
It put you into a position of defense in general with a lot of aspects of your program, and it was amazing seeing you in early May, graduation. How many Adams State basketball players had their moment? And did they all graduate their senior year? No, but they committed to the Valley. Guys from East Denver and Vegas and LA and Seattle that have found themselves in this corner of the world in small town USA, stuck around for an extra year, not playing the game, always in the stands watching your program, diploma in hand, walking across that stage. Those are the moments that you spoke of that were so important to you from day one, and when they became real in your last year, it must have been a moment that you'll never forget.
Oh, well, you know what? We've had, I guess, 95 wins here in 5 years. Very blessed, right? There isn't a win we had that's greater than watching a young man walk across that stage after working so hard, and almost all of them to a man. We've had 17 guys graduate that completed their eligibility with me as a coach. And they all have different stories. They all travel different roads. But all of those roads are challenging. Yeah. And to watch guys, some that had to take left turns and detours and speed bumps in the way and obstacles and, you know, all these different things, to be able to achieve that. And, you know, they've always been good at basketball, you know. Most people would bet on them as players and their talent and their athleticism. But most of these guys that graduate, people wouldn't give a nickel for them to walk across that stage with a cap and gown on and receive that degree. And nothing that I've been a part of in college athletics is more rewarding than watching that take place. We've had 12 guys in the last 2 years receive their degrees from Adams State University. And most of those roads were not straight, Bryant. Most of those kids are first-generation students. Most of those athletes are single-parent homes. Those are guys that they didn't realize they could do that. And there were so many people that helped us to do that, none more important than Liz Thomas Hensley, who's our academic coordinator. And in my, you know, I told Liz Thomas Hensley, there's not a player that I've recruited here that I'm more satisfied with. There's not a coach that I've employed here. There's no one I've been associated with in college athletics in my 23 years that I have a deeper sense of gratitude toward than Liz Thomas Hensley, because she changed people's lives. And there are people that did not root for her to do that. There are people at the university that did not support her efforts. There are contemporaries of hers that were not delighted with the fact that she has such a big heart and that she was willing to be an advocate for some of these kids. You know, and that's sad, but she is she's a saint, an angel to me, and she made dreams come true. She's changed the lives more than I or any staff member could ever have done. Liz Thomas Hensley is the most significant figure in Adams State men's basketball over the last 5 years, and it's not even close. It's not a close second, myself included, what she's done for our young men. She took a lot of guys that were 2 years removed from their eligibility and languishing. still hanging around going to school, but no real plan, no idea of how to get it done. And she took those guys and she organized their thoughts and their plans and helped them to see how they could get this done. And these guys spent a lot of money at the university finishing up and getting their degree, because nothing is going to change their lives more than the degree. And 17 of the 27 young men that have finished their eligibility with me have gotten their degrees. 2 of those 10 that didn't came in with degrees in Marcus Hall and Julian Scott, and came in and went to grad school. 3 of those additional 8 chose to go play professionally and sign contracts, and so they're in that path as opposed to graduation. In addition, 1 other player. So really only 4, 5 at the most players that finished their eligibility with our basketball program did not get their degree. And I want all of them to finish, but I am very, very proud of that accomplishment. And I'm very proud whenever I sit and I watch these guys walk across the stage, because they're doing something that I don't even know they know and appreciate the magnitude of what they're doing.
You mentioned their background. They're from single-parent homes where there hasn't been a college graduate before or maybe after them. That's what they're there to change. They are starting a generational connection to college and higher education. You grew up in a single-parent home. How much of a factor was it to not have a father in your life, to become a father figure for your players who also didn't have one?
Great question, because you know, every year our team would go on what we call a retreat to advance, and we would spend 3 days at a cabin that was given to us by Ted Morrison to use for the purpose of bonding, of developing our team. And the Morrison family is very generous and helpful, and they were very involved in helping us to develop our team. But every time we would go on those retreats, what came out of every one of those retreats, 2 things. Number one, it was life-changing for us every time we did that, because you know, as Mrs. Morrison said to me, it's not man 101 to become introspective, and these guys would become introspective and deal with each other and help each other to grow, and we would share with each other and be vulnerable to each other. But you know what we learned every time? That a father was the most significant denominator in every one of our lives, every one of us. For the guys like Robbie Hanslick, Seth Heimbaugh, Nate Ingebrigtsen, and Kobe Joe Hunt, many guys that had father figures front and center in their lives and how it projected them forward, to the guys like myself and many other players, and even Coach Chuck White, who lost his father at a very young age. The void when you didn't have it, the strength that you gained from having that father, it taught us all that. And one of the biggest things that we talked about in our program is learn from the greatness of your father, and also learn from the emptiness that you feel of not having a father, and be a better man, be a better father, and you know, as you go forward. But that was one of the great things we learned in 5 years. Because you're a first generation student doesn't mean you can't be a first generation graduate. You can change the cycle for your whole family. You could change the way business is done in your family. You know, we just watched guys walk across the stage like Shaheed Young and Shire Lee. Both their parents spent time in my home this past week. Mike Hemsley. These are first generation, first graduates in their family. There are professors that told me and Liz Thomas Hensley, yeah, but they're getting meaningless degrees. Well, I'm here to tell anybody, there's no such thing as a meaningless degree, particularly to a young man or a young person that is representing the first in their family to do it. They are armed and ready to go into the world to do something special. So just because you are first generation doesn't mean you can't be first generation successful. And you are going to change the dynamics of your whole family for history. Because it's a hope when you go as a first generation student, it's a hope that you graduate. When you get the degree, it's now the norm. It's what's expected. I watched Shire Lee with his 4-year-old son Isaiah at graduation 2 weeks ago. His son watched him get that degree. Yeah. Ozell Jamestown carried his daughter across stage as he got his degree. This is going to be the expectation of these people now, as opposed to, I hope I can do it, I hope I can go to college. It's somebody else's dream. This is their reality now.
The wins are nice. It's what is going to lead the conversation about you moving forward, the amount of wins you had. It's clear that the off-the-court victories mean as much, if not more, to you in your time at Adams State. It is fitting and almost funny in some respects that you announce your departure, and about a week and a half later, Tom Thibodeau, he's dismissed from the Chicago Bulls. You both were with your respective institutions for 5 years. Thibodeau won 65% of his regular season games with the Bulls. You won 67% of your regular season games at Adams State. What similarities do you draw in between your time in 5 years at Adams State and the experience that he has gone through with the Bulls?
People with passion are not always going to last a long time in a given place. But and I'm not saying I'm a revolutionary by any stretch of the imagination, but revolutionaries don't last either, because when you got to make major change in a culture and the way things are done, you're going to step on some toes. There are going to be some people offended by your mere presence, and there are going to be some people that, quite frankly, are jealous of your success. And so you may not last a long time. What you hope, and I'm talking about my case, not Coach Tibbs, is that you leave a legacy of effort. You know, I've said to people, our results are not perfect. Our effort is. We put every ounce of our DNA into making Adams State men's basketball successful academically, successful within the community, and successful on the basketball floor. Perfect results, by no means. Perfect effort, absolutely.
I look at the players that you were able to bring into Adams State, sight unseen, that 33 of the 44 kids that you brought into Adams State did not have an in-house recruiting visit. They never came to Alamosa, Colorado. When you're selling a dream and you have to be creative in your approach to bring players into the San Luis Valley, to bring them into Alamosa, Colorado, that has to be one of the biggest components of your legacy. That 5 years ago, this program is clearly in a better place. Adams State was 12-42 in the 2 years before you arrived, but you brought in players who invested in the community and wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, every program, Duke has recruiting challenges because the standard of what they have to do is so much higher. Every program has a challenge. We have challenges. I love Alamosa. I love the San Luis Valley. We could have lived our whole lives there. I'm 50. I care about my kids and them being safe and being with good people. It is probably not the preeminent place of entertainment for a young person, we'll put it that way. I don't think there's a lot of kids in the state of Colorado or across the country going to bed at night dreaming of the day they get to go to Alamosa to spend 4 or 5 years of their lives. That's no knock on Alamosa. It's just not a place conducive to young people in terms of the entertainment factor when Walmart is the only thing close to a mall. That being said, when you recruit, you have to recruit not for what you want or what you wish you had. You have to recruit for who you are. And we have to leverage what our strengths are, which is the university, that campus, that athletic department. On a large scale, the facilities that we deal with, our family, our sense of family within our team, a community that's going to support you and take care of you and love you. No, you're not going to be in a club every night dancing around, and you're not going to be in the mall all the time, but you're going to be playing for people who care about you. But you have to, as a coach, understand not only your strengths, you have to understand more importantly what your weaknesses are. And one of the great challenges for us is the fact that, you know, we're in a very remote location. We're 7,500 feet up. We're 4 hours from Denver. We're 3.5+ hours from Albuquerque. We have 14 schools in San Luis Valley. You know, they're great kids. They're great people. It's not a bastion of basketball. It's not a hotbed. It's not Indianapolis, Indiana, in terms of the production of talent. They have had great players. There's a history of the Valley producing players. There's great programs in the Valley. Sanford High School won 2 straight state championships. I think has one of the best high school coaches I've ever been around. They run a great program. Does not automatically mean that those kids are college level athletes, okay? And so we looked at it and we said, you know what, how can we maximize our resources to get the quality that we need to be successful right away? If we believed that it was going to be by utilizing San Luis Valley kids And if anyone believed that it could have been done, it would have been done already, exclusively. Now, I do believe our JV program allowed us to bring San Luis Valley kids, if they were willing, into the program and try to develop and grow. But, you know, if you're going to be a successful high school recruiting program, you need to have successful high school basketball players within your grasp. And if you have to drive 8 hours to get to them, they're probably going to pass over 5 or 6 RMAC schools to come to you. So if you're a high school kid and you're in Denver, okay, the biggest city in the state, where the most basketball players are, if Adams State is recruiting you and you're good enough to play at Adams State in the RMAC, then you're probably good enough to play at Regis, and you're probably good enough to play at Metro, and you're probably good enough to play at UCCS and Pueblo and Mines and Colorado Christian and Colorado College. That's a lot before they get to Adams State. It's also more expensive to recruit a high school kid. You have to recruit the kid, the parents, the high school coach, the AAU coach usually, and when you go see that kid, he's usually the only prospect on the floor for you. So you're going and seeing one player. All of that has to be taken into consideration. That being said, I believe very firmly, whether Adams State or anybody likes it, Adams State men's basketball is, if it's going to be successful, at its core, it's going to be a transfer situation. You should augment it with high school kids, but at its core, it's going to be a transfer school because of those factors. Mainly because your resources are limited. You don't have unlimited money to fly around and do whatever you want in terms of recruiting. And so that's why we chose to go the route we went. To recruit junior college players primarily. Certainly, I would rather have a good player for 4 years than a good player for 2 years. But also in terms of money, you have a greater chance in a remote area like Alamosa or in Gunnison, Colorado, Western State, of not retaining a player, high school kid. A junior college kid for 2 years, they've played basketball for 2 years. The parents aren't as involved in the decision. They just want to go somewhere and be successful and be a part of success. They got 2 years to get it done, get your degree. High school kid knows he has lots of options. If I go there and I don't play right away, I can transfer. If I go there and I don't like the town that well, I can transfer. If I go there and the remote location is something I can't handle, I can transfer. And we don't, quite frankly, have the resources at Alamosa, not only financially, but in human resources to help those kids. I believe Adams State as a whole has a retention issue. I believe that a remote school is always going to have a retention issue. It doesn't speak to the quality of your education. It speaks to the reality of the situation. You're remote. And when you are remote, people don't, you know, stick and stay for 4 and 5 years. So we chose to go the path, to take the path we took with recruits. We were able to get a lot of guys without ever even visiting them on campus. As you said, 33 of the 44 kids that signed and played at Adams State while I was a coach never visited campus. They built a relationship with me and my staff. They trusted us. They came there on that trust. That's why I feel such a sense of loyalty to those guys, is because most of those guys took my word, trusted me, came into an environment that they knew was not conducive to them socially. But they said, Coach, I believe in you. I believe in what you're doing. I believe in Adams State. I want to be a part of something special. And that's why I would run through the fires of hell for my guys, because those guys came there on my word. And I am committed to them in the holistic sense of their being. As men, as students, and as players, because I can tell you right now, almost every kid we signed could have gone to a more metropolitan situation, to a more metropolitan school. Now, if Adams State or anybody believes that, you know what, we can survive off the Valley, and you survive off Valley kids and you want to go in that direction, more power to them. I wasn't a good enough coach to be able to do that. In fact, I believe that in the 5 years I was a coach at Adams State, if I didn't sign a Valley kid, I don't believe any other kid went and played college basketball in the whole 5 years I was a coach there anywhere else. And I believe that's even junior college. I don't believe they played any basketball other than the opportunity that we afforded them. And we afforded some of them opportunities.
What a run. And I know those players are appreciative, community is appreciative. You'll be missed by the university, the conference, the RMAC officials. But now it's on to Utah. And is Utah State ready for the MJ Mayhem? Are they ready? Because you got to cross state on it. Michael Jackson has to follow you to Utah, to Logan. Let them know what they're getting into.
You know, I've been in Utah before.
I know.
You know, I've had MJ in Utah. I will tell you this. You know, I used to have MJ on my callback on my phone. It's not on there anymore. there's a certain person at Utah State University who shall remain anonymous, but I will say she's high up in the athletic administration, and she had a conversation with me a while ago, way before I even went to Utah State, and she says, I think you should take Michael Jackson off your ringer. So I love MJ, but I'm like, really? She said, yeah. I said, well, I'll have to do that.
Coach, you can never say goodbye to MJ.
Well, you could take MJ off my ringer, but you can't take MJ out of my heart, man. I had an MJ deal the whole way down here, singing at full throttle. I played my playlist was MJ Top 20.
Yeah.
My favorite.
When you said you're going to be late, it was like, no, he's at number 18.
Oh,
there are 2 more tracks. There are 2 more tracks. He's in the parking lot.
I mean, I am the best seated dancer that you have ever seen. My MJ.
You got moves within the moves.
No, my MJ in the car and my hee-hees and ows and
you're seated right now. I don't see why we can't have a taste of it.
I just feel like you should never ask a man to do in the shower or in his car, do that in public. I just don't think that that's appropriate, and I don't think it's fair for you to try to put me on the spot like that.
I've never done that before.
No,
in 5 years of interviews, I've never put you on the spot.
At some point, you might want to smarten up and realize this is Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, buddy.
I'm gonna miss that hee-hee. I just am. It's gone for good. Enjoy the Mountain West. You know it well. Adams State was an incredible 5 years of your life that does not sum up you or your coaching career, but it is one of those building block periods where the program is in great shape. Russ Caton is ready to step in and do a wonderful job, and here you are. Oh, absolutely, he will. You had an incredible working relationship with them, and that's how the torch gets passed down one to the next.
I'm really proud of the fact that an assistant coach that worked with us, and Russ Caton and I have a relationship from when he played for Southern Utah, and I was an assistant back in the mid-'90s. So he's more than capable. He will do a great job. Adams State, our basketball program is bigger than any one man. We always told that to the players, and it's bigger than me. And it'll go on, and hopefully I'll root for them, and hopefully they will thrive. They'll do better than we ever did. That's what I wish for, because the people of the Valley deserve that.
He's Lewis Wilson, Adams State men's basketball on the road to Logan, Utah for Coach, Utah State University. We'll catch you on ESPN real soon, Coach.
Yeah, we play Duke November 29th on ESPN, so you will.
There it is. Man, myth, the legend. He came, he saw, he conquered. On to the next one.